Not gonna just run. Guess what we got, guys? I got a razor blade, and we got ourselves a new pigeon noise making thing. This thing right here come from Precision Turbo. Definitely kidding. I'll give you a hint on where this turbo is made. Hi. If you guys keep subscribing, we can do like a precision turbo in the future, but eBay is going to be the recipe for making. I meant to do that. The eBay is the recipe for making turbo noises at the moment, because unless I get a killer deal on a used turbo, we ain't running no precision. I even got an eBay turbo on my Cummins truck. I'm gonna open this and see if there's even a turbo in here. Because you never know, especially after COVID, you never know what they're up to. It's a box in a box. Golly, you better not be broken with all this packaging.
Another box.
It's a box.
At least that one's not
taped.
taped. It's nice and packaged. Nice.
Yeah, it's well packaged. I'm not doing it again.
Okay.
Alright. Here's the turbo. It's a lot smaller than the one we had, but it should do its job.
Nice.
Oh, that doesn't go there. Got plenty of oil on it. And then it came with the flange for the down pipe. And that goes there, and then you put your pipe in there and weld it. Cool. Easy enough. And then it looks like on the bottom of this there's some kind of instruction. Oh dang, it came with the T4 flange.
Oh, nice.
The gasket. It says something in German. I can't read German. Something in English. In order to avoid wrongful installation. Noted. Okay. So, here's the sheet on the turbo and its flow rates, because I'm real concerned about a Chinese turbo's flow rates. Yep, it does air. It moves air and stuff, and there's a bunch of squiggly lines here.
Does it make beautiful?
I don't know. Oh. Manufactor. Wuxi eBay Turbocharger Company Ltd.
Sweet.
And then don't forget operator. Oh, I can't with these people. I just can't. Okay. We got a T4 gasket. We got the oil drain gasket. I did already buy the fitting for this, so that we have the fitting for the turbo feed, which goes right here. Right there is the turbo feed, and then it has a regular drain, and it does have ports for coolant, but we ain't running no coolant. I was trying to get all my ducks in a row, get everything figured out, see what exactly I needed to do on all the wiring, what I'm keeping, what I'm getting rid of, how to integrate the bulkhead connector to isolate the engine harness from everything else. It's going to be a lot of work. I have to retain the throttle position sensor, this vehicle speed sensor signal, so the transmission should shift like it's supposed to. If I goof something, we'll know when we're done, I guess, but fingers crossed everything goes okay. So I'm going to start stripping this harness back. We're going to get all the zip ties off of it and start cutting the tape, getting all this nasty old loom off, and it's going to be a rat's nest in here very soon. We're going to keep everything that's going to make the AC work just like it would factory. My electric fan, we're going to keep that just the way it is right now with the electric fan and then a manual clutch fan on the other side. I will be commanding this fan with AC command on, and then I'll be commanding it when the engine coolant temp gets to a certain temperature, which I'll probably decide on later. But we're going to keep the fan setup the way it is. We are going to wire in our own relay setup so that we can command this fan directly from the Mega Squirt, and a few other little odds and end things. So we're going to start tearing in the wiring, and hopefully we can get this thing thinned out and get rid of the stuff that we don't need, that the Mega Squirt's going to be commanding and the factory ECU will not be commanding anymore. I'm nervous, but I think it's going to work out. I think it'll be fine. It's easier with the manual transmission because you just make the motor work and then you shift gears, but this thing has to know what's going on. The transmission is not going to shift right otherwise. So yeah, we have to follow all the right steps and do it the right way. All right, we'll be back. Time lapse. Let's go. Not a phase, Mom. Oh, hey guys. So we're doing some wiring on the Jeep. We've got a lot thinned out. We had a ton of wiring poking out of these little connectors here that go to the PCM. So we've thinned it out quite a bit. You can see there's just a select few wires left. Some of these are going to stay and actually get used to split the signal off between the sensor and the new computer. And I'm just going to use this wire to save me having to run it through the firewall and everything else, because the computer is going to be inside the Jeep, and I'm still debating on how I want to do the bulkhead connector, because we're having to keep more of the original harness than I originally anticipated, because in order for the transmission to work, the AC to work, the cruise control to work, and oddly enough my oil pressure gauge to work, I have to run all that through the PCM. So a lot of this is going away, but a few of them are going to be staying behind just so I can basically piggyback. Like fuel pump relay, I'll go ahead and just trigger that one with the Mega Squirt to fire the fuel pump relay, and then we'll just use the wiring that's already in the tank so we don't have to do a bunch of fancy stuff. We've already got a fuse, we already got a relay, we're pretty well good to go on that. Alright, so a lot of wiring left to do. I'm not going to time lapse all this because it's going to get very dry and boring, and it's going to take a long time. We are going to loom it with that new fancy stuff, that split loom that I bought, braided, so I think that'll help a lot, at least cleaning it up. But there is going to be a bit of wiring still in the engine bay, so let's go ahead and thin this crap out, and we'll be back when it looks slightly less horrific and intimidating. Okay, the time has come. We are doing the wiring on the Jeep, and things are happening. So in this box, we've got the harness. This is a 10-foot harness. No, it's an 8-foot harness. This is an 8-foot flying lead harness from DIY Auto Tune. This is the MS3 Pro Mini harness. So we'll be using this on this guy. This is our new MS3 Pro Mini. I've been wanting this thing pretty much since it came out. I really would have liked to went with the MS3 Pro Ultimate, but there's about $1,000 price difference between this one and that one, and this one does pretty much what I need it to do. It's got rolling anti-lag, it's got the built-in map sensor, it can do pretty much everything. The little tuning cable plugs in here. I mean, it doesn't. In the future we'll upgrade, I'm sure, but as for right now, this thing's going to do everything I need it to do. We have some vacuum hose, which I don't think we'll be using that because we're going to go with the push connect hard line. I got the tuning cable, the USB adapter, all that fancy stuff, and then of course the big MS3 Pro sticker. So these guys were real cool. I messaged them and talked to them for a while, told them what I was doing, and they didn't have a sponsorship open, which I'm not quite to their requirements yet anyway for followers and subscribers and all that stuff. However, they did hook me up with a decent little discount, so that helped a lot with all the stuff I had to get. So I was pretty happy about that. They were real friendly, real helpful. Every time I have to message them or call them, they're super nice, super helpful, very knowledgeable. So that's done. We got to get all that wired in. This one I'm really excited about. This thing is cool. So this right here came from Maven Performance. All right, next one up. We've got Maven Performance right here. These guys are great. My friend Tom that has Lucky 8 Performance. I'll see if I can stick it up on the screen here. I actually work with Tom, and we do performance stuff, cars, trucks, race cars, all that good stuff. So Tom met these guys at PRI a while back, and he was telling me about this bulkhead connector they have, and I was pretty much sold on it right away. So I hopped on, got a hold of the guys over at Maven Performance, and I told them what I was wanting to do. Told them that Tom had suggested I get a hold of them and recommended me over to them, and they actually helped me out a lot more than I thought they would on the price and the stuff that I needed. And I mean, they just sent it out. So we got a crazy good deal on all this stuff. I'm not upset about that at all. So Maven Performance, you guys go check them out. I mean, I got everything I need. All 47 little pins are in this little baggie. The connector, this thing is super sweet. It's so simple. So you do all your pins, and then you put this on your bulkhead, and the rest is history. I goofed and drilled a hole that was 1.5 inches. I drilled a hole that was 1.5 inches and realized afterwards that there was literally a piece of paper in the box with this fancy bulkhead connector that told me how big to make the hole, which is 2 1/8 inches. So I read that when I first got it, but then I measured basically across the threads right here with my caliper, and it came out to 1.5 inches. So I went and bought 1.5 inch hole saw, and it wasn't big enough. So I went back today and bought 2 1/8, and I put the 1.5 inch inside of the 2 1/8. That way I could use that as a guide, since there was already a hole. And if you guys have ever used a hole saw on a hole that's already there, it's pretty well impossible without the little pilot on the arbor to make the hole bigger. So we started, hold on, I'll show you. We started with this. This is the original hole we cut, and we ended up cutting this out also, which would have been pretty well impossible had I not figured out a way to pretty much pilot the hole that was already there. So that worked great. So you guys ever run into that problem, you guys take your original hole saw you already cut the hole with and thread it on the inside of the bigger one. So that worked great. So now you know. So if we come over here now, that's right, that's how it's supposed to fit. So right there is where it's going to live. We already marked the holes. I had to run in and grab some drill bits, so I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes. Then we get this puppy mounted on the firewall, and we should be pretty well good to go on that. I got to figure out all the wiring coming out of the back side of it, so we're going to have to run all the wires from the ECU through the firewall, and what we don't use I'll coil up on the inside of the Jeep and tape it, zip tie it, whatever, out of the way. And if we end up adding inputs and outputs or whatever later on, we can just tap into that and it'll make it super easy. So we're gonna go ahead and try to retain as much of the factory AC cruise control function as we can. So there's a lot of wires still going to be in the engine bay, but instead of having it just all kind of bunched together, I'm going to do a twist on it. We're going to see if we can twist it and then run some tape around it right easy and then loom it. I don't have that fancy Kevlar lacing cord to go around it to keep it really tight, and we're not doing an all fresh built from scratch harness anyway, so I'm not going to absolutely ball out on some Kevlar lacing cord and all that good stuff. I 3D printed this thing. Had to go online and purchase the file for this, but this, if you don't know, is a GM Continental style flex fuel sensor holder. So you take this and you got a little hole right here. You set this notch into this hole, and then you just push down on this and it clips into place, which I'm not going to because I don't want to take it in and out and make it weaker. But yeah, that's 3D printed. I printed that at 85% infill, so it's pretty strong. I mean, it's pretty dang solid, so I think that'll work okay. It is out of PLA Plus. I wanted to do it out of like an ASA filament, but I don't have any right now, so this will have to work. We're making headway. I know it looks still like just a big old bundle of wires, but we are getting there. I've thinned out the harness a good bit. There's a bunch of wires over there that I already removed. I'm not going to be able to use that intercooler, it's too thick, so I do have one coming that's 2 1/4 inches thick, which is pretty good. Actually, I got the tape measure right here. I'll just show you. You can see where 2 1/4 comes to. So we'll have room. We're going to set it as high as we can, and then we're going to take we're going to mount it from up here. I'm going to build some tabs to hang it down, and it'll sit as high as I can get it to, but still get airflow. So we're not going to set it up behind here, but we're going to set it as high as we can and keep it tucked, because this tapers down at the bottom. If you guys can see, it's pretty wide up here, and then it kind of tapers in a little bit, and that restricts our space at the bottom. And then we're going to have to do a little bit of cutting down here on the radiator core support. Not enough that it's a structural integrity problem where we're compromising that, but enough that we can get our pipe through. So I might have to notch the back of the bottom of the grill, because it does hang in right there just a little bit, but we're gonna make it work. I got all my new injectors, all my Beachworks 750cc injectors, and they came with EV1 to EV6, I believe they are, connector adapters. And they even sent a little thing of grease to help all the O-rings going nice and smooth. So I will be using the factory connectors because they're all in actually really good shape. I will be removing all this janky tape off of them, but these are just a push disconnect style EV1 plug, which I really like. None of them are broken, so we'll clean them up real good, and we'll go ahead and use those. I'll loom them all, make it all nice and clean, and it should be nice. So we're making headway. still have the harness just pretty much cut off at both ends over here, and this end will be going to the other side of the bulkhead connector, which is in this box. The other bulkhead connector is here. Shout out to Mike for marking my holes crooked so my bulkhead connector is not straight, so that's super cool. But the other end of that is on the inside, and it will be going to the ECU. So that's all done, that's wired. I'm gonna go ahead and wire the other end of the connector, the piece that goes in that, and then we're gonna go ahead and power up the ECU, because I want to get just a basic just file built, not necessarily a map or anything. I just want to configure what kind of trigger we're using. I found out actually kind of on accident. I was poking around trying to figure out what kind of sensor I wanted to use for my crank trigger, and I found out that there's a preloaded setting for 91 to 01, I believe it is, Cherokee crank sensor and cam sensor. But I'm going to configure it Jeep 2000, I think is what the setting's called for the trigger. That way we'll have crank sensor and cam sensor, so we should have a pretty decent resolution.
Here Tyler's doing the wiring harnesses. He just bought this stuff off of Amazon to make it better. And and let me tell you what, it is working. Yeah, mosquitoes be biting on me. I got that sweet blood. You smell it on me.
So we have gotten pretty much the hardest part out of the way. The hardest part was building the harness coming out of this bulkhead connector. I shouldn't say the hardest, but the most time consuming. So that will be everything for my engine harness going to the ECU. And I've got it ran underneath the brake booster, and then it comes up on the other side. I'm gonna use some zip ties or some fancy stuff, whatever, to keep it tucked up nice and clean. We're gonna try to run it pretty well up under here, keep it all nice and tucked away. We gotta cut these things out. We don't have room for the intercooler. It's gonna be too tight, I think. I can't fish it in there. I could probably pull the header panel off and fish it in there, but it's still gonna be a little tighter than I want it to be. And this intercooler is pretty much the perfect size to fit right there. So we're gonna cut these out, try to make it clean. These aren't super important. The little tabs on the bottom of the grill go in here. They got little clips that rest in here, and then you got your screws that go in up here. We're gonna go ahead and cut these out, try to make it fairly clean. Get these out of the way, and then we can set the intercooler in here and kind of see how much room we do or don't have to do our charge piping. The charge piping is just going to come out. It's going to there's going to be a 90-degree boot, and it's going to run straight down. I'm hoping we have enough room, because I went with like the smallest intercooler I could find. This is really smaller than I would like to run, but for now it'll get us on the road. So this guy is about as China as it gets. It's a 2.5 inch inlet outlet, and then it's 2 1/4 inches thick. That's what it said. I haven't measured it yet, but that's what they said it was. And it's 7 inches tall and pretty much, I think, 17.5 inches long from end to end. So it's pretty good for what I'm wanting to do. And I think we'll still be able to turn our boots and go down pretty well where we need to. I think we can make it work. If we have to cut some boots back a little shorter and do some fancy stuff, the whole thing's custom anyway, so custom. But we're gonna cut this thing, and then I changed my mind. I don't want to cut them anymore. Too bad, because they gone. Maybe they'll grow another Jeep. Hope so. I hope not. This thing's a financial mistake. Well, you know what they say. Well, Corn Pop was a bad dude. All done. Deechworks hooked us up on this. The injectors, they just sent them to me. I did not expect that, but they did. So those are in. They're good for E85. They should give us plenty of headroom. I did the math on the amount of power we're trying to kind of squeeze out of this motor, and it said 520 should be plenty. You know how it goes. You always want a little more later. So I went up to a 750. Then, as you can see, that's my injector harness that runs down and goes up underneath the fuel rail and runs to all my injectors. And my coolant temp sensor, TPS, and IAT. The problem is when I wired all this, I started at the back of the motor and went 1 through 6. This is 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I had them backwards. Well, I thought that maybe I could go in the software, the Tuner Studio, and just flip the firing order for the injectors, which would have worked. However, the firing order fires the injectors and the coils. They're not, you can't tune a separate firing order for the injectors versus the coils. So when I changed the firing order, it changed it for the injectors, but it also said the coils have to be wired in the same sequence as the injectors. So you can't cheat the system if you mess up and wire your injectors backwards like I did and just swap the firing order, because it'll change the ignition firing order too, and then I have to wire the coils backwards, and my brain is going to explode if I do all that. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna keep the 12-volt wire for the injectors, but I'm going to change all of the signal wires. So we're gonna redo the injector harness just on the trigger side, and everything else should be fine. I should be able to remove the rail, clip all the wires, redo just the trigger wires, and then that should be good. We'll put it all back together, loom it up real nice, make it pretty, and we should be good on that. Hi there. We had to run to town and grab a new coolant temperature sensor because the old one was broken, and it's still red, but it was very questionable. So we went ahead and got a new one. I do need to get a new pigtail because this one is missing the entire clip, but that'll be super easy to pull this loom, cut this, pull the loom back, and resolder the new one on. But until I get that, we're gonna plug this thing in. First of all, if you guys have not looked at the website, go grab you a t-shirt. We've got 2 designs as of right now. We'll get more going, but with no one having purchased any, it's kind of hard to afford to get more going. Well, it's okay, I'm not pointing fingers. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. Hey, we need to do a few more things on the Jeep. I did accidentally start it. I know that sounds weird, but I got in it trying to figure out a couple little issues we were having, because we have a voltage drop. When I'm cranking it, it's losing power to the ECU. I don't know what the problem is, but we're having an issue with the ECU losing power while we're cranking. So what I'm going to do, because it's easier to do it this way anyway, if you guys have messed with Tuner Studio, you know, Mega Squirt computers, when you do certain changes, especially with like ignition, major changes within like the software, you have to power cycle the computer for it to burn that tune to the computer. Well, in order to power cycle, I have to turn the key off, turn the key back on, wait on the PI dash to power down, power all the way back up, connect to the ECU, and then display the information that I need to see. And that's a really long process. So what I'm going to try to do is, we're going to put the ECU itself on a toggle switch inside the vehicle, and that way I can supply a constant 12 volts to it straight off the ignition power supply from the battery. And so when we do something like that, we have to power cycle, I can just flip the switch off and on, and it'll power cycle the ECU, and I don't have to power cycle my digital dash because it takes a little while to boot back up. I'm gonna run power into the car. I've got to hook this ground back up to the valve cover. Also, big thank you to my friend Scott. I'm sure he'll be watching this video at some point. So Scott, amazing, super helpful, so much awesome. Yes, Scott, you helped so much on this. So we've got this harness built. I got to tidy it up and put loom on it. So we're running a D510C coil off of a Gen 5 V6 Silverado. I think they're LS3 coils, but they're LT coils. Anyway, it's a D510C is the part number on the coil, and they are a factory GM coil. So I mean, they work. The thing ran like a top when it was running, just for a short period. I didn't want to get it too hot or anything because we're a little low on coolant because we had a radiator leak, but I got that resolved. So we need to get it together. I need to shorten these tabs so that we can mount that big black catch can I got. We've got to cut these tabs, and I'm gonna have to redesign this a little bit to tuck the catch can over here so we can pull off of these ports and run over to the catch can. I still got to do the fuel system. We're still on a stock fuel system, so I've got to pull this or the rear one, I haven't decided, and run my ORB to AN fitting so we can mount our D-Force regulator. Fuel pump, obviously we got to put the new fuel pump in the tank, but we're super close. Like technically I could start it right now, but I want to tidy up this wiring, get the power ran inside for the ECU, get it on a switch, get it buttoned up. I want to take all this and put the little clips that hold it nice and neat, and then we can test drive it, make sure it's shifting gears like it's supposed to. So I'm okay, I promise. Anyway, I've been home. I've had a lot of time to work on it. The girlfriend here, who's been a huge help, she was actually out helping while she hurt herself. She was out in the workshop area back here, which you guys have probably seen me in a time or two before, and she slipped. I had some baseboards laying out there on the floor out of the way, and I thought that they were okay, but she managed to step on one and lost her footing and fell and broke two of the little spurs. I'm not a doctor, guys, don't bash me, but the little vertebrae, the spurs that come off your spine, she broke two of them. And so she's been in a ton of pain. She's on a 6-week recovery path. Hopefully it's no more than that, but we'll see. So far so good. She got her back brace in today and she's doing a lot better. So if you guys buy t-shirts, that'll help a lot too, because neither of us are working right now. So we're gonna keep doing Jeep stuff. The goal is we're gonna try to blow this muffler to pieces before we the goal is we're gonna try to blow the muffler up on the Jeep before we put the turbo on it. Welcome back. All right, we got the gauges installed. Kaboom. Still gotta wire everything in, but I got all the wires tucked back, drilled the holes, got them mounted. It was an absolute task getting it fed down behind here, but I've got it all out down here, so we'll get all this wired in. I still gotta figure out the boost gauge. That's not gonna be too bad. Figure that out. We switched the wideband to Lambda, which is it's all new to me. I've never messed with Lambda. A lot of people are going to Lambda, especially with like ethanol and methanol and all that stuff. So since this thing, I plan on running this on E85. For now, it's just going to be running on 87 because there's no reason to run anything more than that at the moment. Just for test drive and testing everything, get the tune kind of figured out, get the timing where I want it. We're going to run Lambda. I think it's going to make things easier once I start to understand how Lambda works. Hi. What we're having to do is I have to feed the power into the ECU, like I said, on a switch, because we're just having issues with voltage drop and I can't cycle the power easily. So we're going to de-pin this connector real quick, and then we're going to feed power straight into the ECU. So fancy little tool here for this bulkhead connector. Goes in right beside it. Get it all the way in there. And then if you do it right, you can grab that wire and pull it out. If you can get a hold of it, which I cannot because I'm in the room. Some real pro level wiring going on here. I'll tell you what. But yeah, these tools are worth the price that they cost. So just like that, de-pinned. Now we've got to, I'm gonna go ahead and manually fire up the ECU and check my inputs and stuff, because I got to figure out where we're going to be sending signal from the wideband to the ECU. So we're going to power it up real quick, figure that out, and then we can keep moving forward on the wiring. I have to add a little socketed connector right here, because the way I had to feed this backwards into the cabin made it a nightmare to get this bulkhead connector out. So we're just going to put a connector there and be done with it. And there's blue jays flying around screaming at each other. Okay, more wiring, yay. Welcome back, friends. We have found a bit of an issue, resolved an issue I should say. So I had a weird hiccup where when I was cranking, it was not firing the injectors, and I figured that out because I manually put a little bit of fuel in the intake and it would try to start, and so that told me that the coils were getting plenty of power, but the injectors just were not. It was falling off when I was cranking. So here's what was going on. I converted over to side post, cleans it up a lot, but I had a little alligator clamp here, and we had power running straight over to this orange wire down here, which runs straight to the coil harness, and that gives 12 volts to the coils. So the coils were firing fine. because they were getting power straight from the battery. However, the injectors, which runs off of this wire right here, they were not. So what that tells me is this blue wire that I'm getting power from, that's key on, is just falling off when we're cranking, so it can't keep up. Something's robbing power, I'm not too sure, but we pretty much found out that that's our problem, and I found that out by running a power wire through the hole where the bulkhead connector was, and then I ran it straight over to this bunch of wires, and then this one runs to the coils, this one runs to the injectors, and this one runs to the boost controller, just for proof of concept. Everything's working, everything's happy. It's running on a switch, which I'll show you what I did in here. I needed a way to cycle power without shutting the key off and turning it back on, because every time I shut the key off, turn it back on, it takes, you know, 20-30 seconds for the dash to boot back up, and I can see all my gauges. So I put this toggle switch here that does the same thing as turning the key off and on. It cycles power to the ECU. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull power from this switch that runs straight off of this red wire that is constant 12 volts from the battery, and I will run power from this all the way up to here and then back down through this blue and pink wire, which that is the wire I just showed you in the engine bay. I'll pull power from here, and then we will run that through the bulkhead connector. I've got to add a pin on each side, and then we'll be able to cycle the power to the coils, injectors, ECU, and boost controller all at once off of this switch. So that should work fine. It's not really the way I wanted to do it per se, but it does work, and it'll get the Jeep on the road. I can go through and tinker with it later, but this will get us on the road. This will get us to Iowa, and I mean, we might leave it. If it works, it works, but we'll get that buttoned up. I got to add some pins, so I got to add a pin on this side and then a pin on the back side of the bulkhead connector, and we'll be passing power through this bulkhead connector over to all that stuff over there. And then I'll tidy all that up when we get it all wired and put the loom back on it, make it all nice and pretty. So we'll get that fixed, and we'll be back, make sure that the switch is working and the Jeep starts and run like it's supposed to, and then time for a test drive. See if the transmission is going to shift gears like it's supposed to. The issue that we're having now is the voltage regulator for the alternator is built into the PCM on these Jeeps, and for some reason I retained all of that wiring and it's not charging. So what we're going to do is, I already ordered a solid state relay. We're going to go ahead and bypass this regulator inside the PCM, and we're going to use a solid state relay. And MS3Pro Mini has a provision, it can run alternator control. So we're going to go ahead and use that to regulate the alternator, because the regulator is not built into the alternator. Once we resolve the charging problem, we're golden. The relay will be here in like 2 days. Amazon said it'll be here tomorrow, but then they said it'll be here Tuesday. Today's Sunday. So thanks, Bezos. Hello everybody. Today we have decided, actually we decided yesterday, we're going to be redoing the headliner on the Jeep. So we already got it most of the way down. We all had our hands full, so I didn't really have a good way to stick the GoPro in the Jeep and record everything. But we got the headliner drop. We're going to remove it, and we're going to show you guys what fabric we decided to go with. And their girlfriend is going to get that knocked out. I'm still doing some cleaning up on the wiring on the Jeep. And parts should be here today to get that solid state relay on there, so we can get the battery actually charging like it's supposed to, or the alternator charging. So we're going to get this headliner out, stick it on the table over here. Look out, tree. Flip that hoe over. Yeah. I'm going to try to blow it away.
Yeah, we'll put that fluff back in there.
So all this foam stuff,
yep,
comes off real easy.
It's going to get cleaned really good.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. I've got some really
work on a
killer,
dirty surface.
real nice expensive headliner adhesive in the house. So we'll grab that and spray that on here, and hopefully it doesn't move, because we went with a light fabric, so it shouldn't have any issue holding it to the actual headliner. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
this thing hasn't had a headliner in it since I got it, so this is cool. And
excited to make it pretty again.
We have to make it somewhat presentable for ice cream crews. All right, so I'm gonna set up a time lapse and you guys can watch the process of that, and I'll be over here cleaning up wiring.
Everything is not enough. Really hard by the ocean. None of those white hot sands. Where every sunrise is just for you. So come along and take my hand.